Today, our very first episode of Life Empowered, which will be conversations and stories to inspire you to fulfill your God-given purpose. Welcome to this first episode where I, Chaplain Krista, will usually host interviews that I pray will encourage you to explore opportunities that facilitate growth, create excitement, and challenge you to reach your fullest potential in your journey. But today, we're starting off just a little bit different. I have my friend Deb DeSandro here, a gifted speaker and trainer who is actually going to interview me just so that you can get a little peek inside the whole purpose behind this podcast, not episode, and learn about what the point of this is. And so today I welcome Deb DeSandro. Thank you so much, Deb, for taking time out of your day and helping me launch this podcast and ask these questions. And also, obviously, I am going to interview Deb in the future to learn about speaking up. And so watch for that. But today we have Deb here interviewing me so we can see what the heck is this podcast about. So thank you, Deb. So glad to have you with me. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really excited to do this, Krista, because I am one of your biggest admirers, and I've had the pleasure of getting to work with you on some projects for your speaking, a little bit of writing.
Yes.
And the more I do, the more layers of understanding I get about your organization, Redeem and Restore Center.
Well, thank you.
And I can see how that intersects with this podcast title, Life Empowered. And I'm really fascinated by that. And I think it has so many layers to go, not only in your organization, but for all of us listening. So I understand that you're going to be talking about stories and empowering tools and freedoms that we have or maybe don't have, and how to be empowered with that. So I'd like to start by asking you, for those who may not know everything about your organization, just tell us a little bit about what you do at Redeem and Restore Center and what your role is.
Sure. So obviously this podcast is supported and sponsored by the organization Redeem and Restore Center that I am the founder and executive director of. Our mission is to love, restore, support women who are restoring their lives after escaping sex trafficking and exploitation. And so with that, our vision is really about how can we build this culture of loving, restoring, and supporting others? Because to do that, to serve these women and walk alongside them, we're all people and we all got our stuff, and we often do need some encouragement and support. So our volunteers, our champions, our donators, we want to help them become fully whole and live wholehearted as well. And into the community, we want to show ourselves as this is who we are. We are about loving, restoring, supporting people. That way we can do our job even better at walking alongside the women that need the help the most. And so that's a little bit about what we do and who we are.
So, Krista, give me an example about empowerment. I would imagine, how does empowerment intersect with restoring those women to their full lives? And maybe you could walk us through an example or something, just using the name of she.
Sure. Let me see. So an example. So we have a woman who has been broken in any way, every way possible, basically, physically, mentally, psychologically, relationally, spiritually. That's a lot of stuff. We all have our stuff, and it usually isn't in every one of those areas, of course, right? So they need a lot of support in many different ways. And that's not just from one thing or one person. But it really starts out with the same thing. To empower them is to come alongside them, to see them for who they are, the value of who they really are under all the stuff, under all the circumstances and all the struggles they have to work through, to see them as a valuable human being. And that's what we all really want. We
Mhm.
all want to be known. We all want to be seen and valued, with our stuff, with our baggage, that we are still valuable, that we have something to say, that we have something to give in some way in this life. And so to do that is really just seeing them as a valuable human, just that simple, and seeing them as someone who needs a friend. And sometimes the basic thing is listening. How do you get heard? Is someone listening, not just telling them what they need to do, or, oh, you can't do that, or you should be doing that, but just listening, being present. Those are key things for any of our relationships. Is if we do that more, then we'll be able to communicate better. We'll be able to hear each other better. We're not thinking of the next thing, which sometimes I can do, moving ahead, plowing through, being present, so that they know they're supported. And I really believe that that's really all of us. The more that we can have that in our own personal lives, be seen, be heard, that we'll
Right.
have more courage, more support to make those hard choices, or to be able to talk about something that we didn't really want to talk about, or and process through things, garbage, or just confusions or complications that we're trying to process and work through at work, or in a friendship, or with our parents, or with our spouse. If we have those kinds of relationships, or we're to a point where we can see that we are valuable, and then we can learn to put up boundaries, personally, and help the women learn to put up boundaries, not to have people walk all over us, or be a yes person, or be the person that walks all over everyone else, respecting what they have to say as well. Those are healthy boundaries.
Right. Right. The right balance of power. When you look at it in terms of being empowered, we
Yes.
can have an imbalance of power.
Yes.
When I think in terms of losing our power, or feeling powerless, which would possibly be the opposite of feeling empowered, what are some of the signs that we can look for that you see in your organization, but for all of us? What
Mm-hmm.
are some signs that we have lost our power?
Well, I believe when you're having conversations and you can't look at someone in the eye, or you feel uncomfortable looking at someone in the eye, that'd be a sign you have some issues of being seen and valued. Another one may be you always give in and allow someone else to make the decision. Um, let's see, what would be another one? Those are the easy ones. So trying to think of some others.
Yes.
Yes. So other issues, again, are boundaries. Is, do you bulldoze over other people? Are you not listening? Are you the one that's always talking? Again, sometimes part of that is personality, but also
Right.
having good boundaries with your personality. I am a talker. I am a driver. So for me personally, sometimes it can be, I need to be quiet and ask the questions and listen, and not
Right.
just, sometimes you feel good, like, oh, another thing, what we find, when you're trying to help someone, you think you are helping them and empowering them. You're telling them, you're trying to lead them down a direction. And you say some things and they're like, yeah. And you say some more things and they're like, yeah. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I'm leading the right way. But really, most often, you're really not. They're like hearing you and agreeing with you, but that doesn't mean anything's going to change. It's about getting people to change, or getting people to question things, to have critical thinking. Is really more about asking questions instead of talking at someone or telling them something. And that's another big thing for me, because for me growing up, I was always talked at. No one asked me questions.
Mhm.
So even learning to know what questions
Right.
to ask is newer for me. Um, I don't know. Those are the things that come to mind right away, anyhow.
Oh, that's excellent. I can relate. I can relate to. I was recently called a wave. That I come in and wave, and I have this big personality, and I talk too much. in certain circles I do when I feel really comfortable. And I am being reminded over and over that I need to listen more. So I think there's that side of women. Let's take women, for instance, because I know you work, but with that work, those women. But also when I think of it in terms of giving in, we've been conditioned as throughout the generations to smile, to be nice, to give in sometimes to men. And I can see how that can take away our power, where we would feel less empowered.
Yeah.
And,
And I've also seen that in much in culture, doing that actually to men as well, trying to make them more like women
give me
instead.
an example.
Yeah, instead of being the man, we used to have this culture of this burly, strong man, but again, which is not every man. But again, the man was supposed to be the head, was supposed to lead and guide and protect. But I've seen so many shifts in culture also trying to more womanize the men and make them more gentle and more agreeable, and let some of us drivers or women take more control, and then they become the yes. So I can see that in both ways for the men and the
Yeah.
women. And it really has to do with culture, or really, how were you raised? How were you in the home? Was the mom the boss and the dad just did his work and came home and was quiet? Was the dad in charge and the mom was the helper? What is your normal? So a lot of times when I
Right.
we all have different normals, which set us up on how we view life, how we relate with other people, how we communicate. We all have different normals. Just because it's normal for us doesn't mean it's normal for someone else. Like I remember um, for a long time, and this is very recent, there are so many things, if I knew it, I thought, well, everyone must know it because, I don't think I'm that smart. I don't think I have that much information. So if I know it, and when someone didn't know it, I would laugh. I'd be like, not laughing at them, but more of a surprise, like, what? What do you mean you don't know that? How do you not know that? It seems so obvious, but it was really learning that just because I know it, everyone else does not know it. And it doesn't mean that I'm dumb or that I'm smarter. It's just my experience and my knowledge is this, but everyone else has a different experience and a different knowledge. So again, what makes you a yes person? Was it something in how you were raised? Like you just do what I tell you? Like that's what I was told. You will do what you're told. Now, that did not make me a yes person because I still was born with certain things in my personality. It made me a very
Right.
rebellious person because I didn't like that. I
So
knew I was,
it's the opposite effect.
yes, because even though this is, you do what I say, don't ask questions, this is what you're going to do. But my personality was like, well, okay, you're my parent. I'm supposed to listen. But then there's also, and again, just being a kid, I want to do what I want to do. But I really believe it was a big part of my personality of no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I don't agree with you. And I'm going to do it this way. Um, so, there was a lot of struggle, obviously, in my childhood and growing with that personality and with how I was raised. So again, it's not just how you're raised. There's also innate things. So that's something that we'll interview on someone as well, as the use of an Enneagram. I find it an awesome tool to learn more about yourself and your personality, which isn't really determined by how you were raised, but some innermost parts of how you view and deal with things. So that's another opportunity and tool we'll talk about. Like Strength Finder is another great tool.
Right.
And so we'll interview someone about that as well to learn. So there's going to be so many different themes and ideas throughout these episodes, and some you may find really interesting, and obviously we'll tell you about them, and others you may go, yeah, that's not appealing to me. So again, every episode is not going to appeal to everyone, or they're going to be like, I've got that covered. I'm good. Don't need to listen. But every episode we'll try to explore different opportunities or tools, or dig deeper into self-awareness, anything to help empower you, but also just listening to other stories of things that people have gone through and how they've come through the other side to inspire you and encourage you just by what they've gone through. And so I will have lots of those stories as well.
You bring up such a good point, because as you know, I love stories.
Hmm.
I'm big on storytelling and
Yes.
professional speaking. And that is exactly what I was thinking. So when you talk about stories and the stories that we remember that shape us, I often like to say that we have stories that shape us, make us, or break us throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the power of those stories and how they led to the decisions we made or the things that happen in our life can really be telling if we go back and create a timeline of those really memorable, etched in our minds stories that kind of changed our life, whether it was for the good, the bad, or you know indifferent, but just led to the next stage of our life. Do you have a story when you think about life empowerment that comes to mind for you in regards to this?
Perfect. Yes. So for me, we totally believe too that story is not just to look back and see how it shaped you, but also if it did break you or beat you down or trap you or lock you, let's go back and look at that. How can you grow from that now? How can you go back and look through that painful situation and work through that? And that's another huge empowering opportunities to not just say that's happened and move on, but to go back and look. So for me, my story is huge in why I do what I do today and even why this podcast. So I gave you a little hint already about my mother. Hopefully she'll never listen to this because I don't want to have that conversation yet. But it goes back even further. I was born into a very abusive relationship. Um, that man used to beat my mom on a regular basis, but she married him because he was the father. But eventually, obviously, she realized she couldn't live that way. So she left him. But that obviously left a lot of marks on my mother, making her who she is, and of course, other life circumstances. And because of that, you can already see there's a lot of walls between me and my mother. We did not have a relationship where we can converse and have good communication and a relationship. I love her and respect her because she's my mom and she's done a lot for me, but we don't really have that connection. We don't have that. So I've known abandonment, loneliness, and rejection all my life. Huge driver in my life, a huge reason why I do what I do, why I started Redeem and Restore Center. I want to be there for the most broken and abandoned women there are, and be in their corner and say, you are not alone. You are valuable. I'm here for you. I can't fix you. I can't make it better, but I care about you. You are valuable. I'm here. So that's a huge driver in who I am and what I do. I never planned to do what I'm doing right now. I didn't know this is what I would do. It was never on my radar, but my journey of life and growing and healing and becoming wholehearted, this is how God has taken my garbage and twisted around and bringing more restoration and redemption out of it to help empower and build up others and tell others that they can get through and grow and heal even through the worst circumstances. So I love already that has been a huge driver. But another huge piece that many of us can relate to on different levels is then as I got older, because I never talked about these things, I didn't have anyone to talk about, but also in fifth grade, an older boy began to sexually abuse me and I never told anyone. And so as a little kid, how you process that or not really process that. But as you get older and you grow, those things, yes, you're resilient. I could live, I could still have fun, and I had friends, but there was a lot of parts of me that were broken because of my father, because of my mother, and because of this boy. And so as I got older, shame became a huge wall or box I was trapped inside because I had so much shame of who I thought I was, what I allowed others to do to me, because again, my normal was I'm on my own. It's just me. And, I've got to figure it out. And then if I like boys and I want them to like me, then I'm going to allow them to do certain things because this is what I was shown when I was younger, that, oh, this is what they want. So I should do this if I want them to like me. So those are huge pieces that shaped me. But again,
Right.
I got to grow and learn from that, not till many, many years later, actually fairly recent. But those are pieces that shaped me and lead me to do what I do today. And I believe all of us can use our past garbage, our past things that have been done to us, things that we've done, and learn from them because we are still valuable. We are not the sum of our choices. We can have hope for what is ahead, hope for who we were meant to be. And constantly learning, constantly growing. And it's hard. A lot of the work I have done to grow from those ugly things has been hard, but it's also been beautiful. And now I've gotten to really connect with others as well that have, like I've never have most of my life. I feel known and seen by others. I feel valued. People have spoken life into me, saying that I'm courageous, saying that I'm valuable, that I'm beautiful. Things that are very hard for me to accept. Sorry, can't help it. Those are very hard for me to process because it's hard for me to accept that encouragement and those things because those are not normal. Those are rarities in my life. So I'm thankful for these beautiful blessings of the relationships that I have now. And again, I want to be that kind of person for others. And, I still got my stuff. I still have my personality. I am a driver. I'm a let's get this done. I will make things happen and sometimes forget to pay attention to people. And I hate that. But again, it's you're always learning. You're always growing. And that's what can make
Absolutely.
you healthy.
Absolutely. And you are courageous and for sharing that with us. And I can relate on so many levels to a feeling of shame. And your past puts you in a state of vulnerability that is really does take away our power.
Mm-hmm.
And when that power is taken away and we don't feel of value, we can get caught in that shame spiral. And it happens to us, so many of us in our lives. I mean, on some level, I can relate to that, although I didn't have an experience like yours, which is terrible. But I'm sure at the same time, in some way, it helps you to relate to the women that you work with. And they feel like you really do understand and listen. So,
I love that you brought up the word vulnerability because again, I always talk about this until we're age 25, we're not fully mentally or emotionally developed. 25.
right,
We
that's
can
right.
drink, we can get married, we can drive, we can do all these things, but we can have all the right answers in our head, but because we're not fully emotionally developed, we will still do what our emotions do. And we can say we aren't driven by emotions. We can say we aren't driven by emotions,
Right.
but we cannot remove emotions. They move us, they hold us, they bring excitement, they bring joy, they bring sadness, they can change our attitudes. We can have all the right information, but if our emotions don't get connected to the right information, get on the same page, it's a big struggle. And I'm so thankful that that's it of the horror in my life, that I didn't experience much worse things that so many others have. But I like that you talk about vulnerability because we've all had vulnerabilities, and also I believe we all can relate to others at different places because loneliness is a common theme. Rejection is a common theme with so many of us. Again, it doesn't matter what it's from. Rejection's rejection, right? Loneliness is loneliness, however
Right.
that was. Abandonment, what was it, that made you feel that way? Ambivalence, all these things that all of us can relate to in some level. It is how we relate because we're all human. You see, we're all human, and our
And we all went
personalities.
to school.
I'm sorry, what?
We all went to school.
Yes.
We all went through all of those things in school when we felt like we were rejected
Yep.
or not part of the in crowd or vulnerable to boys or teachers, or we've all had those experiences and stories that contributed to a feeling of powerlessness before we were 25,
Mm-hmm.
when we were children, and
Yes.
not only in our mind, but in spirit and body. And then we have to take all that brokenness and pain, and now all of a sudden we're going to be an adult, and we're supposed to be able to transform all that in a good way
Right.
and
And
make all
just
these mature decisions.
and I love that, because just because all of a sudden now we're older, we're over 25, or all of a sudden because we're married, like, we know we don't have all the answers, right? We haven't just figured out because now we're an adult, but we haven't figured it out. We're still figuring things out. And that's why I love the idea of this podcast, to empower others. I love to connect with stories, to inspire, to encourage. And because if we can really choose to say, yes, I need to keep learning, I need to keep growing, because we always do. And until we're dead, there's always new things to learn. There's ways to grow, to connect with more people, to have deeper relationships, to be have better communication, to do our jobs better, to be leaders, be stronger leaders. So I love the idea of this podcast and this opportunity that I get to have to find these people to interview as well, and learn from them myself, and share that with others, of all these different ways that we can be empowered and continue to grow in our journey of life.
Absolutely. I love what you said. So one of the things I heard was that lifelong learning and the willingness to learn is empowering, and
Yes,
that will give us empowerment, and it'll give that us a level of confidence that we might not have. So
totally.
lifelong learning is definitely a key, which you're going to be bringing to your podcasts. I think that's such a great idea, and just hearing other people's stories really helps us too, to see that where we might have fit into that and how we might have related to something similar to happening to us.
Yeah.
I also think about my mother. When you talk about your mother, that would be a great podcast, to talk about mothers, because mothers have such a huge influence on our lives, and their relationships that are really difficult to heal. My mother now has been gone since 2011, and I'm still working on healing my relationship with my mother. So we can do that even when they're not here, you
Yes,
know, and I can see how that impacted, you know, yes, I have my personality, but we're also impacted by our family of origin,
hmm,
and in some of the directions we end up taking in life, and how powerful we feel, you know. Um, I also had the opportunity to watch the whole Jeffrey Epstein
mm,
um, documentary, and I would encourage anyone who wants to really understand trafficking, human trafficking, to watch that. It's a tough subject, but it's, Krista, it so is in alignment with empowerment that you're talking about, because I could see how vulnerable and shame contributed to not only these people becoming involved, these young women, they were mostly all women, but and actually knowing that it wasn't right for them, and being shamed into staying,
hmm,
being because they feel so powerless
hmm,
to get out of a situation, and when I watched it, I thought about your organization a lot and the things that we have talked about. I think people are able to separate themselves from that, because they think, well, that's not part of my lifestyle. We do have some of this privilege viewpoint that we think we're immune to it, or our families are immune to it.
hmm.
But from what I understand, that grooming can start very young, and it doesn't mean you come from um, a family where everything went wrong or where you were poor. Can you explain a little how?
Sure. Yeah, and it really goes back to our already parts we've talked about, vulnerability. Being under age 25, you're most vulnerable. Does that mean we're not vulnerable after 25? Huh. Let's see, anyone lose someone for death, have a divorce, lose a
Yeah.
job? Vulnerability can be any time. And so really, anytime you're vulnerable, having dreams is vulnerable. Someone can play upon your dreams. People, watching the Jeffrey Epstein story would give you an insight of the depravity of how deep people will go to get what they want and to
Mhm.
bulldoze over people in horrific ways to get what they want. So yeah, thinking about that so obviously kids, so often, unfortunately, it's a family member. It can be a mother who actually can sell her children, use them, to get drugs, or a father. But most often, those that get trapped into that world, it had to do with some vulnerability already there, like maybe from a absent father or a horrible mother, or they were sexually abused by someone that they knew and no one knew, or it wasn't dealt with. It can be anything. Like I said, even dreams, someone manipulating, playing upon that issue, that vulnerability, and using it for their advantage. And so often, over 50% of the time, how people are entrapped in this horrible world of exploitation and sex trafficking is that vulnerability, and then through a relationship. So now, didn't I say we all need that support? We need someone to see us, someone in our corner. And do you know how desperate even now most of our youth are to be seen? That
Right.
most of them are, are sending sext pictures or through apps or conversation to people they don't even know, out of that desperation to be seen, to be encouraged, to say you're valuable, to say you're beautiful. Yeah. And
It's
so
so
it's really about that, and it's often through a relationship, which can start on social media. It can start at a mall. It can start through an older relationship, like the older boy who I got connected to through my family. But over 50% of those get trapped into this is someone building that relationship, and most often a romantic relationship. So usually there's a huge age difference, but not always. And they get them to manipulate them, use them, lie to them. But it isn't all bad. It starts out with, again, how do you manipulate?
right,
You tell them what they want to hear. You give them
right.
things they want to have: nice clothes, nails, get their hair done, take them shopping. Oh, I love you, you are wonderful. And then all of a sudden the relationship gets manipulated, and then now maybe they've been sold, or they were beat, or sold to someone, or raped by multiple people. Then we got the shame. And then
Mm,
maybe you have younger siblings or someone else in your family they threaten. It doesn't ever look
right.
one way. There's, again, just as the variabilities of us as people are the variabilities of manipulation, how they can use you, control you, contain you. The best manipulators know how to read people, know how to play upon your weaknesses.
Mm,
um, and again, the younger you are, the easier that is to do. So unfortunately, yet none of us are safe from this. It happens everywhere. And the question I always ask of when people are trying to think it's over here, or these type of people, or this city, or this state, or this country, some people want to still think it's just other countries. But again, what did I say? We're all human. So the depravity of the Epstein and the other people that did those things with him, to the beauty and goodness of others. I mean, it's human nature. It's, what do we
right.
want? What drives us? And do we care about others? Do we respect others? Or do we don't care and we just want to get what we want to get? So I ask, where do the evil people live? Where do the good people
Mm,
live?
everywhere,
And where do the
everywhere,
vulnerable people live? Same answer.
everywhere, everywhere.
Everywhere. And now you can begin to see that this is why it happens everywhere. It's not a certain culture, a certain race, a certain town. It isn't just the cities. But does it happen more in the cities? There's a logical answer for that. Can you tell me, Deb, why do you think trafficking, exploitation, and abuse and everything else, why does it happen more in the cities?
Maybe because there's just more people together.
Ta-da!
So you're going to have
Yes,
more of all of those things.
exactly.
You
More
know,
people, it happens more. So that's why we hear the stories from the cities more often. But
right.
does
You
that
have
say it
more
doesn't
people
happen
that
in rural?
yeah.
So the other thing is 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused before age 18. 1 in 7 boys are sexually abused before the age 18. And do you know many of them never tell?
Right.
So what do you think those kids do with that? How do you think others see them and play, and find those weaknesses, how they don't look them in the eye, how they want the attention or they hide from the attention? It can go either way based on their personality. So just seeing those basic facts, it's not to
Right.
make us live in fear, but open your eyes, pay attention that you don't know who that person is. You don't really know them. They're a teacher. Wonderful. They show they really care. Yes. But do you really know them? Because
Right.
because these manipulators come in every size, package, culture, just like the ones that are vulnerable. It can be a teacher, it could be a lawyer, it could be a judge, it could be a police officer, it could be a contractor, it could be a family member. Again, because it's not about what we do or where we are, it's what's inside. And again,
Right.
not live in fear, though. It is not to make you fearful. It's to get you to not think you're inside this bubble. It's to wake you up and get you to pay attention, and especially if you have kids, to be in their business. We had this culture for a while of let them be, let them do. We love them. We're here for them. They're kids. You need to be in their
Yep.
business. So I
You're
always
not
say
supposed
that,
to be their friend. Don't be their friend.
right?
You
And
know, I,
my most
yeah.
fun has been when I have been able to speak to high schoolers, because I don't mince words. I know
Mhm.
what they're seeing. I know what they're sharing with one another. I've had kids. I still do. My son is 22. My daughter is 19. So I've lived through this. It's not like I don't know anything. But speaking to teenagers has been really interesting, because I've had them ask, how come other adults don't talk to us like this? And I said, I'm sorry, they should.
Mhm.
I don't
Well,
mince words. I know what they're sharing in their apps. I know what they're talking about. I know all the things. And you can't play games. You got to be real. If you want them to not be manipulated, to not be entrapped by some relationship, you need to be talking with them. You need to talk about possibilities and what could happen, and just be more eyes wide open instead of pretending and hoping, because I know I've been there. There has been some things that even with my own kids, and I saw things on their phones because I would check them, and I'd look at him and I'd be like, oh,
check their phones.
and I'm like, no, not my kid. So I've had the same
Yeah.
thought. No, yes, your kid. If
Yes,
you're not
your
in
kid.
their business and you don't know, then those moments are gone. I had those moments. I had to face them. They were uncomfortable, but we got to talk about it. We got to work through it and hopefully protect them from future horrific circumstances.
Absolutely. Krista, you brought up another good point that I think would be a great podcast, not only at the level of school kids, but even understanding what manipulation is, the tactics, the techniques,
Mm.
what to look for would be a great, seminar for kids. But then I think how many adults get
Oh God.
trapped, and because we've never talked about it, we don't even know what that looks like.
Right.
I've seen grown women in this situation with husbands who just rationalize and justify manipulation and emotional abuse
Mm-hmm.
because that's because they think it's okay. But to hear, like you said, somebody just come right out and say, this is a technique, this is a manipulation tactic, here's why it happens, so that we can start to look at that, even in relation to people we work with, in
Yep.
situations we work with, even in our churches or in our, synagogues or in our community events and that are run by people that this happens. Yes, like you said, I love that everywhere. If
Yep.
we could understand that, and it is people that I remember reading about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
Mm-hmm.
once we get past just having our shelter, the most important one is love and belonging.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to feel loved and we all want to feel we belong. And if someone manipulates that,
Mm-hmm.
um, we are vulnerable to it. That's for
Exactly.
sure.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that looks like a lot of good podcasts in your future.
Yes. And if you have ideas or you've listened to this or you have a great story, I'd love for you to contact me because I want to share your story or share your tool that you think would be very helpful for others because that's what we're about. I'm always looking for new people to interview, to learn myself, and to share that with others.
Yes, everyone, share with Krista all of your ideas on life empowerment. We just touched the surface today, but I
Yes.
really enjoyed it and getting to know a little bit more about you and your organization, why this is so important to you. I can't wait to listen in to some more podcasts. Now, when is your next one?
It'll be in 2 weeks. So we'll release 2 episodes a month. The second, well, it's about the second and fourth, but basically every other week we will release a new podcast episode for you on one theme or another to inspire and encourage you.
And will these be, what's the easiest way for us to find them?
Well, we will eventually, hopefully right away, they'll be able to find on Apple Podcasts, anywhere podcasts can be found, you will be able to find it. If you just type in Life Empowered, you will be able to find it.
Great. And we
And
could
if,
also, will it be on your website too for your
yes,
organization?
yep, we will also post it on our website and we'll be sharing on social media. So if you do want to learn about Redeem and Restore Center, of course, you are welcome to check out our website, redeemandrestore.org. Spelled out. We're on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. I'd love for you to connect and learn more, ask questions. We have other programs we will talk more about what we do at Redeem and Restore Center. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Deb, so much for leading this conversation and pulling it out. Hopefully, we can continue to grow and do better with each episode, since this is very new for
You
me.
did fantastic, by the way.
Thanks, Deb. And I look forward to interviewing Deb and hearing what she has to say about speaking up and being more courageous and being able to use our voice. And also, I believe that's how you carry yourself and hold yourself as well. So look forward to that. But thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope to see you again on future podcast episodes. Have a fantastic day.
Take care.